Farmer finds beggar child sleeping with pigs, and the reason. Frank Miller woke before dawn as he had done for the past 40 years, but nothing could have prepared him for what he would find in his barn on that cold December morning, his way. Heavy footsteps echoed in the silence when an impossible scene unfolded before his eyes. There, among the pigs on his farm, a blond boy of about 6 slept deeply, wearing a dirty yellow t-shirt and torn blue shorts. The child was curled up between the animals, who seemed to protect him from the morning chill with their warm bodies. Frank stood frozen for long seconds. In 52 years of life, he had never witnessed anything like it. His first reaction was anger. Who would dare trespass on his property? But something about the child's fragility stopped him from acting impulsively. The farmer approached slowly, trying not to make a sound. The boy looked exhausted, his hair caked with mud, and his clothes soaked with dampness. Strangely, the pigs showed no aggression. On the contrary, one of the largest piglets was practically hugging the child. "My lord above," Frank murmured, running his trembling hands over his bearded face. He thought of waking the boy immediately, but something held him back. Maybe it was the peace he saw on that young face, or perhaps the fear of frightening a child who had clearly already endured so much suffering. Frank decided to wait. He tiptoed back to the house, but breakfast went unnoticed. His wife Dorothy had passed 3 years ago, the victim of a long illness, and he had lived alone on the farm for a long time. He had no experience with children. They'd never had any of their own. 2 hours later, when he returned to the barn, the boy was gone. Only small footprints in the mud proved it hadn't been a strange dream. Frank examined every inch of the area, searching for clues about who the child was and how he had gotten there. The following days were silent torture for the farmer. He couldn't shake the image from his mind. That helpless child alone, sleeping with the pigs as if they were family. During the day, he tried to focus on work, but at night, he lay awake thinking about what he should have done. On the third night, Frank decided to keep watch. He took an old chair and positioned himself strategically behind the feed shed, where he had a full view of the barn. The clock struck 2 in the morning when he heard soft footsteps in the grass. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The boy appeared again, walking slowly toward the pigs. Frank watched, fascinated, as the animals reacted. They lifted their heads but made no noise. It was as if they already knew this routine. The child settled in, the same spot as the night before, between 2 large pigs that moved closer to offer warmth. Frank waited a few more minutes before cautiously approaching. "Hey there, little one," he said softly. The boy startled awake, his blue eyes wide with terror. He tried to scramble up and run, but Frank raised his hands in peace. "Easy, easy, I won't hurt you, I just want to talk." The child stayed frozen, like a cornered animal. Frank noticed he was even thinner than he'd seemed the first night. His ribs were visible through the dirty shirt. "What's your name?" the farmer asked, crouching to the boy's level. Silence. The child's eyes darted nervously, searching for an escape. "My name's Frank. This is my farm. Are you hungry?" For the first time, there was a reaction. The boy swallowed dryly and nodded almost imperceptibly. "Wait here. I'll get you some food." Frank returned home with a heavy heart. He made sandwiches, grabbed a glass of milk and some fruit. When he came back, he found the boy in the exact same spot, as if he hadn't moved an inch. "Here you go," he said, placing the food on the ground and stepping back a few paces. The child eyed the food suspiciously, then looked at Frank, then back at the food again. Hunger won over fear. He grabbed a sandwich and began eating desperately, as if he hadn't eaten in days. "Slow down, little one, you'll make yourself sick." But the boy didn't listen. He devoured everything in minutes, gulped down the milk in one go, and looked up at Frank hopefully, as if asking for more. "I'll bring more food tomorrow. Now tell me, where are your parents?" The child's face closed off immediately. He shook his head and curled back up among the pigs. Frank realized he wouldn't get any more answers that night. He let the boy rest and went home with more questions than answers. The next morning, he went to see Ruth, his his closest neighbor, who lived about a mile away. Ruth was known for knowing everything that happened in the area. If anyone had information about missing children, it would be her. "Good morning, Ruth," he greeted, tipping his hat. "Frank, what a surprise. Come in, I'll make some coffee. Actually, I came to ask you something. Have you heard about any lost children around here?" Ruth stopped stirring sugar into her coffee and studied him curiously. "What kind of child?" "A little boy, about 6 years old, blonde. He's been showing up on my property for the past few nights." "Oh, must be one of those street kids running around with their no-good parents," Ruth replied dismissively. "There's a family of drifters camping by the river on the other side of town, probably sending their kids to steal from farms." Frank's stomach turned at his neighbor's prejudiced remark. "Have you seen this family?" "Not in person, but folks in town won't stop complaining. They say they're dirty, begging at stoplights, letting their kids run wild, a disgrace." "And where exactly are they camped?" "Near the old bridge, if I remember right." "But Frank, you don't want to get mixed up with those people, do you? They're dangerous. Best to call the authorities and have them removed." The farmer thanked her for the information and left Ruth's house more troubled than when he arrived. Her description didn't match the scared, starving boy he'd found at all. That child didn't seem like a thief. He seemed desperate for care and protection. That afternoon, Frank decided to go to the old bridge. It was a remote spot where an old road used to run before the new highway was built. The river beneath the bridge was low this time of year. As he approached, he spotted a makeshift tent made of blue plastic tarp and scrap wood. Clothes hung on a rope clothesline, and a black pot sat beside a dead campfire. "Anyone there?" Frank called, keeping a respectful distance. A thin man, around 40, stepped out of the tent. He wore a faded plaid shirt and patched jeans. His messy brown hair and unshaven beard gave him a weary look. "Afternoon," the man said, visibly tense. "Afternoon. My name's Frank Miller. I'm a farmer around here." "Robert Johnson," the other man introduced himself, not moving closer. "I came because I found a boy on my property. Blonde hair, about 6 years old. Mrs. Ruth mentioned you have children." Robert's face changed instantly, shifting from suspicion to pure desperation. "Ethan, you've seen my son Ethan. He's been missing for 3 days. We've been searching everywhere." "He's fine," Frank reassured quickly. "He's eating. But why doesn't he come home?" Robert ran his hands through his hair in a gesture of deep anguish. "It's complicated, sir. Our situation isn't easy. Ethan, he's ashamed of us." "What do you mean?" "My wife is very sick. We lost our home 6 months ago when I lost my job. We've been living under the old bridge, trying to save up to rent a better place. Ethan can't stand seeing people in the city look at us with disgust." Frank felt a pang in his chest. He was beginning to understand this family's struggle. "May I meet your wife?" Robert hesitated, but motioned for him to follow to the tent. Inside, a pale woman lay on a thin mattress, on the ground. She couldn't have been more than 35, but the illness made her look much older. "This is my wife, Sarah," Robert introduced tenderly. "Pleased to meet you," Frank said, tipping his hat again. Sarah tried to sit up, but Robert helped her stay lying down. "Forgive me for not greeting you properly," she said weakly. "I'm not feeling well." "Don't worry, Mom. I came here because of Ethan. He's been showing up at my farm." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "My boy. He ran away because he couldn't bear seeing me like this. He said he'd find a way to help the family, without anyone knowing who we are." "What do you mean?" "Ethan is very smart for his age," Robert explained. "He noticed people treat us badly because we live here. In the city, when he asked for spare change at the traffic light to buy medicine for his mother, people said horrible things, called him a brat, a little thief. He said he'd find a way to help without anyone knowing we're a family of beggars," Sarah added, sobbing. Frank felt as if he'd been struck in the chest. That child was sleeping with pigs because he didn't want to shame his parents. The purity of that act left him speechless. "Why don't you seek help? There are organizations." "We've tried." "Mr. Frank," Robert interrupted, "but I don't have proper documents because I worked under the table. Sarah needs tests that are very expensive, and the places that offer help have long lines. While we wait, she gets worse every day." "What's her health issue?" "The clinic doctors said it might be something with her liver, but she needs more. Tests, to be sure. The treatment costs over $3,000 a month. Frank stayed silent for a few minutes, taking it all in. This family wasn't made up of freeloaders, as Mrs. Ruth had suggested. They were honest people hit by a string of hardships. Where did you live before? I worked on a farm on the other side of the city, Robert said. We had a small house, but it was ours. Sarah worked at a bakery. When she got sick and had to step away, I asked my boss for help to pay for the first tests. What happened? Robert lowered his head, clearly ashamed of the memory. He said he couldn't help me financially, but understood my situation. When Sarah got worse and I had to miss work to take her to the doctor, he let me go. Said he needed someone more committed to the job. And the house? It belonged to the farm. When I was fired, we had to leave. We used our savings to rent a small room in the city for 3 months, but the money ran out. The landlord evicted us, and we ended up on the streets. The story grew even more tragic. Frank thought of Ethan, a 6-year-old carrying the weight of shielding his parents from others' judgment. Don't you have family to help? I'm an orphan, Robert said. Sarah has a sister in New York, but they had a fight years ago, and don't speak anymore. Why did they fight? Sarah, who had been quiet until then, spoke with a choked voice. Because she warned me not to marry Robert. She said he was no good, that he was too poor for me. When we got married, she cut ties. And now? Now she was right, Sarah whispered. He really couldn't give me a good life. Robert gripped his wife's hand tightly. Don't say that, Sarah. We'll get through this. We just need time. Frank Miller watched the couple facing adversity with a dignity he rarely saw in more privileged people. He decided he had to help, but wasn't sure how. I'll bring Ethan back to you tonight, he promised. And tomorrow, we'll talk about a solution for this situation. You don't have to trouble yourself, Robert said. It's already so kind of you to come here and let us know about Ethan. I want to help. You don't deserve to be going through this. When Frank got home, it was already dusk. He prepared a basket with enough food for several people and went back to the barn to wait for Ethan. The boy appeared right at 2 in the morning, as if he had an appointment. Ethan, Frank called softly. The boy turned, less startled this time. I spoke to your parents today. Ethan's eyes widened, full of worry. They're very worried about you. Your mother is crying. I can't go back, Ethan said, speaking for the first time. His voice was thin but firm. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting. Now continuing. Why not? Because people say bad things about us. I heard a woman in town say my mother was faking her illness to get easy money. I heard a man say my father was lazy. Frank crouched to Ethan's height. And do you believe that? No, Ethan answered fiercely. My father works so hard, he wakes up early every day looking for work, and my mother is really sick. I hear her moaning in pain at night. Then why did you run away? Because I thought if I disappeared, people would stop saying bad things about them. And I thought if I could get a job, I could help with money, without anyone knowing I was their son. Frank's heart broke at those words. A 6-year-old shouldn't carry such weight on his shoulders. Ethan, your parents love you more than anything in the world. They'd rather go hungry than lose you. But I'm just a burden to them. That's not true. You're the reason they keep fighting. Your mother told me the only thing keeping her alive is knowing you need her. Ethan began to cry silently. I just want her to get better and for us to have a home again. And you will, I'll help you. But first you need to go back to your parents. They're desperate without you. Do you promise you'll help? I promise. Ethan hesitated for a few seconds, then nodded. Frank picked him up. The boy weighed far too little for his age, and together they walked to the old bridge. When Robert and Sarah saw Ethan, the scene was pure emotion. Sarah managed to sit up on the mattress and hugged her son with a strength that seemed impossible for her fragile state. Robert joined the embrace, and the three cried together for long minutes. Don't ever run away like that again, my son, Sarah said. You're all we have. I'm sorry, Mom, I just wanted to help. You help just by existing, Robert replied. Without you, we'd have no reason to go on. Frank watched the family, reunion with a lump in his throat. It had been so long since he'd witnessed such pure, true love. He decided it was time to put his plan into action. "Robert, can I talk to you outside?" The two men stepped out of the tent. The night was cold, and a gentle breeze swayed the trees around them. "Tomorrow you'll start working on my farm," Frank announced bluntly. "Sir, I need help with the cattle and the crops. The pay is fair, there's a house for your family to live in, and I'll advance the money for Sarah's treatment." Robert stood speechless for a few seconds. I don't know what to say. Why would you do this for us?" "Because you deserve a chance, and because that boy taught me a lesson about love and sacrifice I'll never forget." "But you don't even know me well. How can you be sure you can trust me?" "I know your son. A child like Ethan could only have been raised by people of good character." Robert began to cry, trying to hide his face. "Mr. Frank, I promise you won't regret this. I'll work harder than any employee you've ever had." "I know you will. And Robert, just call me Frank." The next morning, Frank showed up at the old bridge with his pickup truck. He helped the family load their few belongings and took them to the farm. The worker's house had been empty for over a year since his last employee moved to the city. It was a simple but dignified structure: 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, and bathroom. For a family that had been living under a bridge, it felt like a palace. "Sarah will rest here while you men work," Frank said. "Tomorrow we'll go to the doctor for those tests." Ethan ran through the house, exploring every corner. It had been months since he'd had a space of his own. "Can I choose which room will be mine?" he asked excitedly. "Of course you can," Sarah replied, smiling for the first time in a long while. Robert spent his first day getting to know the farm. Frank was impressed by his knowledge of cattle and farming. The man truly knew his stuff. "Where did you learn so much about raising cattle?" Frank asked. "I've worked on farms since I was 15. My father was a cowboy. He taught me a lot before he passed." "Why did you leave the last farm you worked at?" Robert hesitated before answering. "I had a disagreement with the owner. He wanted me to do something I thought was wrong." "What kind of thing?" "I'd rather not go into details. Let's just say he had unconventional methods for increasing profits, and I didn't want any part of it." Frank sensed there was more to the story, but decided not to press the matter. What mattered was that Robert had shown integrity, even when it cost him his job. In the days that followed, life on the farm settled into a new routine. Robert worked with impressive dedication, arriving early and leaving late. Sarah, though still weak, helped with small household tasks and tended to a garden she started behind the house. Ethan played in the yard, finally able to be a child again. Sarah's tests revealed she had hepatitis C, a disease that, with proper treatment, had a high chance of recovery. Frank covered the full cost, expensive but not beyond his means. "Why are you doing all this for us?" Sarah asked one afternoon, as Frank took Ethan into town for ice cream. "Because you reminded me what really matters in life," he answered honestly. "I'd forgotten what it means to be a family." The truth was, Frank felt less alone with them around. His big empty house had come alive again. The sound of Ethan playing in the yard, conversations with Robert during work, the smell of Sarah's cooking. It filled a void he hadn't even known existed. But not everything was perfect. A few weeks after the Johnson family moved to the farm, Frank began receiving unwanted visits from curious and critical neighbors. The first was Ruth, who showed up unannounced on a Saturday morning. "Frank, I need to talk to you," she said, with the air of someone bearing important gossip. "Good morning, Ruth. Come in. I'll ask Sarah to make some coffee." "No need. I didn't come for a social visit. I came to warn you about this family you've brought here." Frank felt his irritation rise but tried to stay calm. "What kind of warning?" "People in town are saying you're harboring vagrants here. That's not good for your reputation. Robert works harder than any employee I've ever had, and Sarah is one of the most polite people I know. What's the problem with that?" "Frank, they're beggars. They were living under an old bridge. How can you trust these people?" "Does Ruth, with all due respect, a family's financial situation doesn't determine their character. You're being naive. I bet it won't be long before things start disappearing from your house." The conversation was interrupted by Ethan, who came running from the backyard with a smile on his face. "Uncle Frank, Uncle Frank, come see the bird's nest I found. Ruth looked at the boy with disdain. Even the children are losing respect, she muttered. What was that? Frank asked, his voice tense. Nothing. I just think you should be more careful about who you let live on your property. After Ruth left, Frank grew thoughtful. It wasn't the first time he'd heard nasty comments about his decision to help the Johnson family. Some neighbors and even suppliers had made similar remarks. In the middle of the afternoon, he received a visit from Richard Taylor, a local farmer he'd done business with for many years. Frank, my friend, I'm here as a colleague to give you some advice. What advice, Richard? This business of you bringing a family of beggars to live here is causing quite a stir. People are questioning your judgment. Since when do people's opinions interfere with my life? Since always, Frank. You have business in this area. Your reputation affects your contracts. Some buyers have already asked me if it's true you're sheltering freeloaders. Freeloaders? Robert works harder than 3 men combined. Maybe so, but people see it differently. You need to think about the future of your business. That conversation left Frank deeply unsettled. He'd never imagined his decision to help a family in need could be seen as something negative. That evening, during dinner, he watched Robert, Sarah, and Ethan chatting excitedly about their plans for the garden. Seeing them happy and united strengthened his conviction that he'd made the right choice. Robert, can I talk to you after dinner? Of course, boss. The 2 men sat on the porch of the main house. The night was clear and the sound of crickets created a peaceful atmosphere. I want you to know that some people around here aren't happy with my decision to help. Are your family? Robert lowered his head, clearly embarrassed. I figured that might happen. If you want us to leave. That's not it, Frank interrupted. I just want you to be aware of the situation. They might try to cause trouble for you. What kind of trouble? Gossip, attempts to drive us apart, maybe even sabotage the business. Prejudiced people are capable of a lot. Robert was silent for a few minutes. Frank, can I tell you something? Of course. The boss at the farm where I worked before, he didn't fire me just because I refused to do something wrong. He fired me because I reported something he was doing. What exactly? He was selling sick cattle to slaughterhouses, falsifying health documents. When I found out, I told him to stop it. He said if I didn't like it, I could look for another job. And you left? Not right away. I tried to convince him several times. But when I saw he wouldn't stop, I made an anonymous report to the health inspection agency. Frank Miller was impressed by Robert Johnson's courage. And did he find out it was you? There was no way to hide it. I was the only employee who knew the details of the operation. He fired me the same day the inspectors paid him a visit. And why didn't you tell me this before? Because I was afraid you'd think I was a snitch, someone who couldn't be trusted. Robert, you did the right thing. That man was putting public health at risk, but it cost me my job and our home. Sometimes I wonder if I should have kept quiet and let people eat contaminated meat. Never. You're a man of integrity. Robert sighed in relief. Thank you for understanding, Frank. And about the problems that might come because of us being here. We don't want you to suffer for our sake. Leave that to me. People with principles are rare these days. I won't give up my convictions because of gossip. The following week, the problems became more concrete. Frank lost 2 important meat supply contracts for restaurants in the area. Both buyers gave vague excuses, but he suspected the real reason was tied to the talk about his new reputation. The hardest blow came when his main business partner, who he'd worked with for over 15 years, cancelled an exclusive cattle supply deal for a major meatpacking plant. Frank, you know I have great respect for you, John Wilson said during a tense office conversation. But the other suppliers are questioning your hiring standards. They say they can't trust someone who can't tell reliable people from opportunists. John, Robert is the most dedicated employee I've ever had. How does that affect our business? Perception, Frank. In our line of work, reputation is everything. If people start doubting your judgment in one area, they'll soon question your other decisions. So you're cancelling our contract over gossip? I'm cancelling because I need to protect my own business. I'm sorry, but that's how the market works. Frank left that meeting deeply shaken. For the first time, he began to question whether his decision to help the Johnson family had truly been wise. That night at dinner, he was quieter than usual. Ethan, always observant, noticed his sadness. "Uncle Frank, are you sad?" "A little, Ethan." "Is it because of us?" The innocent question hit Frank hard. He looked at the child who, just months earlier, had slept with pigs out of love for his parents, and felt his resolve strengthen. "No, Ethan, I'm sad for other reasons, but you all are the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." Robert and Sarah exchanged worried glances. They could tell something was wrong, but didn't know exactly what. After Ethan went to bed, Frank talked to the couple about the business situation. "People really didn't like my decision to help you," he admitted. "I'm losing contracts." "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. "We'll leave tomorrow." "No, you won't. I'm telling you this because I want you to know my decision was deliberate. I'd rather lose money than lose you." "But Frank," Robert said, "you could end up in financial trouble because of us." "So what? Money can be earned back. Real family is harder to find." Sarah began to cry. "Why do you treat us like family? We're just your employees." "Because you've reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Ethan showed me what true love is when he slept with pigs to protect you all. Robert showed me what it means to have principles when he gave up his job to do the right thing. And you, Sarah, showed me what dignity is when you kept hope alive, even in the worst circumstances." "We're the ones who learned from you," said Robert. "You gave us a second chance when no one else believed in us, and we'll get through this together," promised Frank. "Real families don't fall apart in hard times." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we're just starting out. Now continuing, in the weeks that followed, Frank's financial situation worsened even more. Besides cancelled contracts, some suppliers began charging higher prices, citing risks in doing business with him. The social isolation also deepened. Invitations to rural community events stopped coming, and casual encounters in town became awkward. But life on the farm carried on. Sarah's treatment was showing excellent results. She could already manage more intense activities and had regained much of her energy. Ethan was attending school in the city and excelling as a bright student. Robert continued working with exemplary dedication, often going above and beyond what was expected. One morning, Frank woke up to a surprise. As he went out to check the cattle, he found Robert repairing a fence that had been damaged overnight. "Good morning, Robert. What time did you wake up?" 5 a.m. I saw the fence was broken and figured I'd fix it before the cattle got out." "You didn't have to do that alone. We could have fixed it together after breakfast." "Frank, after everything you've done for us, there's no such thing as have to, only gratitude." Those words touched the farmer deeply. While neighbors criticized him and business partners abandoned him, here was a man who worked not out of obligation but out of appreciation. Later that same day, Frank received an unexpected visitor. A well-dressed man in his 60s parked a new truck in front of the main house and asked to speak with him. "Good afternoon. Are you Frank Miller?" "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" "My name is William Parker. I own several farms in the region and also have businesses in the capital." Frank recognized the name. William Parker was known as one of the most prosperous ranchers in the state. "A pleasure, Mr. Parker. Please come in. I came because I heard an interesting story about you." "What story?" "About one of your workers, Robert Johnson." Frank's heart raced. What could William Parker want with Robert? "What about Robert?" "He worked for me a few years ago." "One of the best employees I ever had, honest, hardworking, knowledgeable. When he left, I missed him terribly." "Why did he leave?" "Because he discovered one of my managers was running shady deals and warned me. Unfortunately, at the time, I didn't listen to Robert, and I ended up losing a lot of money to that dishonest manager." Frank was confused. Robert had never mentioned working for William Parker. "Mr. Parker, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Robert told me he left his last job because he reported his boss for selling sick cattle." William laughed loudly. "No misunderstanding at all. Robert never worked directly for the person behind the illegal sales. He worked for me, but that scheme was run by one of the farms I'd recently bought. The manager there was acting behind my back. So Robert warned me about what was happening, but I, proud and distrustful, thought he was lying to undermine the manager. I fired Robert and kept the other man in the position. And then, 6 months later, inspectors showed up at the farm and discovered exactly what Robert had reported. I lost a fortune in fines, compensations, and lost licenses. The worst part is that Robert still tried to warn me 2 more times before making the official report. Frank was shocked by that revelation. And why are you telling me this now? Because I found out Robert is working for you, and I also heard you're facing trouble for helping his family. How did you know that? Frank, in this business, news travels fast. I also heard you found Robert's son sleeping with pigs because the child didn't want to shame his parents. It's true. A child like that can only have exceptional parents. And after everything I've been through, I've learned to value people of character like Robert. William paused, looking out the window toward the corral where Robert was working. I came here to make you an offer. What offer? I want to partner with your farm. I can secure supply, contracts that will make up for all your losses and then some. Frank couldn't believe what he was hearing. Why would you do that? First, because I recognize quality when I see it. Someone who puts human values above profit is exactly the kind of partner I'm looking for. And second, I want a chance to make amends for the mistake I made with Robert. I know I can never undo the harm I caused his family, but I can ensure you all have a prosperous life from here on out. That's very generous, but it's not generosity, Frank, it's justice. And it's also good business. People of integrity are rare, and when we find them, we should value them. Frank was moved by the unexpected proposal. After weeks of isolation and financial losses, there was finally light at the end of the tunnel. Can I talk to Robert? Say about this? Of course, in fact, I'd like to speak with him personally, if possible. Frank called Robert, who appeared a few minutes later in his dirty work clothes and sunburned face. Robert, this is Mr. William Parker. Robert paled when he recognized his former boss. Mr. Parker. Robert, I came here to apologize for what I did to you and your family. Apologize. You were right about that manager. I should have listened to you from the first warning. Because of my pride and distrust, I ruined the life of an honest family. Robert didn't know how to react. Sir, what's done is done. I hold no grudges. But I carry the guilt and I want to make things right. William explained his partnership proposal, emphasizing it wasn't charity, but a recognition of the professional value of both Frank and Robert. I'd like you to consider working for me again, Robert, this time as a minority partner in one of the farms. Partner? You know the business, you have experience, and most importantly, you have integrity. Those are qualities I value highly. Robert looked at Frank, clearly torn between the opportunity and his loyalty. Mr. Parker, I truly appreciate the offer, but I can't abandon Frank after all he's done for us. Who said you'd have to abandon him? William laughed. The partnership I'm proposing involves both farms. Frank would be my primary partner, and you'd be the general operations manager. The offer was even better than it first seemed. William proposed an exclusive cattle supply contract for his meatpacking networks, along with profit sharing for both Frank and Robert. I need a few days to think about it, said Frank. Of course, but don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often. After William left, Frank, Robert, and Sarah gathered in the kitchen to discuss the proposal. It seems too good to be true, said Sarah. I think so too, Robert agreed. Why would he do this after all this time? Maybe because people like you are truly rare, Frank suggested. William Parker didn't get where he is by being naive. If he's making this offer, it's because he sees real value in you. What if it's a trap? What kind of trap? He's offering contracts, not asking for anything in return except our work. The discussion went on late into the night, with each of them weighing the pros and cons. Ethan, who had overheard part of the conversation, made an observation that surprised the adults. Uncle Frank, you said that when you found me sleeping with the pigs, you knew my parents were good people. Maybe that man thought the same about you when he heard how you helped our family. The simplicity of that remark put everything into perspective. Frank smiled and ruffled Ethan's hair. I think you're right, kiddo. The next day, Frank called William Parker and accepted the partnership offer. The contract was signed a week later in a simple but moving ceremony. The change in everyone's lives was immediate and dramatic. Within weeks, Frank's farm was operating at full capacity. Robert took on his new responsibilities with impressive skill, showing administrative abilities that even surprised William. Sarah, fully recovered from her illness, decided to return to school. She enrolled in a correspondence course in farm management, aiming to help with the family business. Ethan continued excelling in school and developed a passion for veterinary work, inspired by his daily contact with the farm animals. But the changes didn't stop there. The partnership with William brought renewed credibility to Frank. Neighbors, who had once criticized him, now sought his business advice. Some even apologized for their harsh words. Ruth was one of the first to visit the farm with a very different expression from their last meeting. "Frank, I came to admit I was wrong about that family." "Ruth, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. My prejudices almost made you lose good people. Now that the whole area is talking about your success with William, I realize the problem was in my head, not your decision." "Financial success doesn't change people's character, Ruth. Robert, Sarah, and Ethan were always good people. The difference is now they have opportunities to prove it." "You're right, and I'm sorry for misjudging them." Frank accepted the apology graciously, but the conversation made him reflect on how society judges people by appearances or financial status, ignoring far more important qualities. 6 months into the partnership with William, Frank's farm had become one of the most prosperous in the region. Robert was promoted to full partner, and his share of the profits allowed him to buy a house in town for his family. But in a surprising turn, Robert decided not to move. "Why not?" Frank asked. "You can afford your own place now." "Because this is our home," Robert replied simply. "This farm took us in when we had nothing. Ethan sees you as family. Sarah found the family she never had here. And I found a brother." Frank was deeply moved by those words. The loneliness he had felt since his wife's departure had been completely healed by the presence of that family. "Then let's renovate and expand the staff house," he decided. "If you're going to stay, it should be with every comfort." The renovation resulted in a spacious and cozy home with individual bedrooms for everyone, a large living room for family gatherings, and a roomy kitchen where Sarah could prepare her special recipes. Ethan got his own room decorated with veterinary themes and a study desk where he spent hours doing homework and reading about animals. During the construction, something happened that deeply moved Frank. Ethan asked if he could keep a small part of his old room exactly as it was on the day they arrived at the farm. "Why, Ethan? So I never forget where we came from. My teacher said people who forget their history risk repeating past mistakes." "Your teacher is very wise. And I also want to, when I grow up and have kids, tell them how important it was to sleep with the pigs, to learn what real love is." Frank hugged Ethan tightly, moved by the maturity of this child who had endured so much suffering, yet kept a pure and grateful heart. The farm thrived even more in the following months. William Parker kept all his promises, and the partnership proved beneficial for everyone involved. Robert developed innovative cattle management techniques that significantly increased productivity, and his ideas began to be copied by other farms in the region. Sarah finished her technical course with the highest grades in her class and took charge of the farm's financial management. Her organization and attention to detail impressed even the experienced accountants William recommended. Ethan continued excelling in school and already talked about studying veterinary medicine at the university. On weekends, he joined Frank and Robert in farm activities, demonstrating a knowledge of animals that surprised visitors and experts alike. But the most emotional moment came nearly a year after that first night. Frank found Ethan sleeping with the pigs. It was a Sunday morning and the family was gathered in the yard for a barbecue. William had been invited and brought his wife and children to personally meet the people who had impressed him so much. During the conversation, William made a revelation that surprised everyone. "Frank, Robert, there's something you should know about our partnership." "What is it?" Frank asked. Do you think I offered this partnership just to make up for my past mistake? Wasn't it? Only partly. The truth is, I'd been observing your farm for a long time, even before I knew Robert worked here. How so? Your breeding methods, your reputation for honesty, the quality of your cattle. I've wanted to partner with you for years, but never found the right moment to bring it up. Frank was surprised. Then why didn't you approach me sooner? Because in our line of work, partnerships only succeed with complete mutual trust. I needed absolute certainty about your character before proposing anything. And what gave you that certainty? The way you treated Robert and his family. When I heard you risked your reputation and business to help people in need, I knew you were exactly the kind of person I wanted to work with. Robert was moved to learn that indirectly he had helped provide this opportunity for Frank. So, our coming here brought good things for everyone, he said. It wasn't you who brought good things, Frank corrected. It was God who placed you in my path to teach me what truly matters in life. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of an unfamiliar car. Frank went to see who it was and was surprised to find an elegant woman, around 40 years, old, accompanied by 2 children. Good afternoon, I'm looking for Robert Johnson. They said he lives here. That's me, said Robert, stepping forward curiously. The woman studied him for a few seconds before speaking. Robert, I'm Jennifer, Sarah's sister. Sarah, who was in the kitchen, heard her sister's voice and came running. The 2 women embraced and cried for long minutes, while everyone watched the emotional reunion. How did you find us? Sarah asked. I read an article in the newspaper about the partnership between this farm and the Parker Group. There was a photo of Robert. When I saw it, I knew I had to come here. You read about us in the paper? The article talked about innovative cattle-raising methods and mentioned the family's story of overcoming hardship. It didn't give full names, but the description and Robert's photo made me certain. William Parker smiled proudly. I authorized that article. I thought your story could inspire others. Jennifer explained that she had recently divorced and was raising her 2 children alone. Her ex-husband had struggled with alcohol and lost the family's entire savings. When I read about your success, I realized I'd been wrong all these years. Robert wasn't the problem. I was the one who was prejudiced. Jennifer, that's in the past, Sarah said generously. What matters is that you're here now. Sarah, I came to ask for forgiveness and to ask for something else. What is it? I want my children to meet their cousin Ethan and see what a real family looks like. They've never had that at home. Ethan, always direct, approached the 2 shy children with Jennifer. You want to see the pigs? They're really gentle. The children nodded timidly, and Ethan led them toward the pen, chattering about the animals as if they were old friends. Jennifer watched with tears in her eyes. Ethan seems like a very special boy. He is, said Frank. He's the one who taught me what real love is. How so? Robert told the whole story, how Ethan had run away to spare his parents the shame, how he slept with the pigs because they didn't judge him, how his purity had touched Frank's heart. A 6-year-old did all that? Jennifer asked, amazed. Ethan's always been mature for his age, Sarah explained. He suffered a lot early in life, but he never lost his ability to love. And now? How is he? He's the happiest kid in the world, Frank replied. He plays, studies, dreams of becoming a vet, but he's never forgotten where he came from and is always grateful for what he has. Jennifer spent the rest of the day at the farm, getting to know the family she'd rejected years before. She was impressed by their prosperity, but even more by the love and unity among them. As evening fell, she said goodbye with an offer. Sarah, I'd love for you all to come spend the holidays in New York. I want you to see my home, and for my kids to spend more time with Ethan. We've never traveled that far, Sarah said hesitantly. It'd be a chance for Ethan to see the big city, Robert reasoned. He could even visit a vet school. Ethan was excited by the idea, and it was decided the family would take their first vacation. In the months that followed, preparations for the trip filled the farm with anticipation. Ethan studied maps of New York. Sarah bought new clothes for everyone, and Robert arranged work so he could be away for 2 weeks. Frank initially worried about the idea of being alone on the farm during the family's vacation, but William Parker offered temporary workers to help in their absence. Frank, this family deserves this vacation. After all they've been through, it's only fair they have moments of joy. You're right. I'll just miss them. 2 weeks will fly by, and they'll come back full of stories to tell. The trip to New York was an absolute success. Ethan was fascinated by the big city. He visited the zoo, museums, and most importantly, saw the veterinary college at Cornell University. "Mom, this is where I want to study when I grow up," he said, impressed by the labs and facilities. "You will, my son. Now we have the means to make your dreams come true." Sarah and Jennifer took the chance to make up for lost time. The two sisters talked for hours about the past, the present, and their plans for the future. "Sarah, you forgive me for being so cruel when you got married?" "Jennifer, I forgave you long ago. I was just waiting for you to be ready to come back. Robert is a wonderful man. I was completely wrong about him. He's always been special. He just needed a chance to prove himself." Robert, meanwhile, used the trip to visit suppliers and learn new management techniques that could be applied on the farm. He was always thinking of ways to improve their work and repay the trust Frank had placed in him. When they returned from vacation, they brought gifts for Frank and plenty of stories to share. The farmer was happy to see them so lively, but even happier to have them back. "How was the trip?" "Amazing," said Ethan, "but I missed the pigs and the calves." "The pigs?" "Yeah, they were my first friends when we got here. I'll never forget how they kept me warm that first night." Frank smiled, remembering how it all began. A child sleeping in the barn had completely changed his life and the lives of everyone around him. That December, the farm received a very special visit. A TV crew from a show about inspiring stories wanted to film a documentary about the transformation of the Johnson family. "We don't want to be on TV," Robert said at first. "Our story is personal." "But it could inspire others going through hard times," argued the show's producer. "Robert's right," Frank agreed. "We shouldn't expose our private lives." It was Ethan who changed everyone's minds. "Dad, what if our story helps other kids sleeping in strange places because they don't have a home? What if it helps other parents who lost their jobs and feel ashamed?" The wisdom of that 7-year-old convinced them all. The documentary was filmed over a week, showing life on the farm, interviewing each family member, and telling the whole story from the beginning. The show aired 3 months later and had a huge impact. Hundreds of people wrote letters sharing their own stories of overcoming hardship, thanking them for the inspiration and asking for advice. Frank was surprised by the amount of mail arriving at the farm. "I never imagined our story could touch so many people," he said. "It's because it's a real story," Sarah replied. "People relate to those who've faced real struggles." One of the most moving letters came from a family in another state who had lost everything in a flood. The father wrote, "Mr. Frank, watching the documentary about your family gave me hope again. My wife is sick, we lost our home, and our 8-year-old son doesn't want to go to school anymore because the other kids mock our situation." Seeing how little Ethan overcame similar circumstances made me realize we should never give up. "Thank you for showing me there are still good people in this world." Frank Miller decided to personally reply to that letter and many others. Soon, he established regular correspondence with families across the country who had watched the program. Robert Johnson suggested they create a project to help other families facing situations like theirs. How would this project work? "We could offer temporary work opportunities for unemployed people while they get back on their feet. It wouldn't be charity, just giving them a chance to prove their worth." The idea excited everyone. William Parker supported the initiative and offered resources to create a structured social reintegration program through farm work. "Are you trying to create some kind of cooperative?" William asked. "Not exactly," Robert explained. "We want to create opportunities for honest people going through temporary hardships to work and rebuild their lives with dignity. Like Ethan did when he slept with the pigs," Frank added. "He didn't want handouts, he wanted a dignified way to help his family." The project took several months to develop. Named the Dignity Project, it offered temporary paid work on the farm for families in vulnerable situations, including housing, meals, and job training. The first family to benefit was the one who had written the heartfelt letter. The father, named Michael, arrived with his sick wife and 8-year-old son in a situation much like Robert's past. Ethan was the first to greet the boy, whose name was Tyler. "Hi, Tyler, I'm Ethan. When I first got here, I was really scared too." "What were you scared of?" "That people wouldn't like me because my family was poor. And now? Now I know what matters isn't money. It's love. And here everyone has plenty of love to give." Tyler smiled for the first time since arriving at the farm. The boys' friendship grew quickly, and soon Tyler was playing and laughing like any other child. Michael proved to be a hard worker, just as Robert had been. His wife, though ill, helped Sarah with small household chores and caring for the smaller animals. Within 6 months, that family had completely turned their lives around. Michael's wife received proper treatment for her illness. Tyler returned to school, and Michael was hired as a permanent worker at a nearby farm. "How do you do this?" Michael asked on their last day. "How do you change lives so easily?" "It's not easy," Frank replied. "It's love. When you truly love someone, you find the strength to move mountains. And you loved our family without even knowing us. We loved you because we saw ourselves in you," Robert explained. "Those who've struggled understand another's pain. Ethan sleeping with the pigs taught me that real love has no limits," Frank added. "A child capable of such generosity showed me everyone deserves a second chance." The success of the Dignity project caught the attention of authorities and social organizations. Soon, Frank's farm became a model for social reintegration through rural work. Speaking invitations came from across the country. Universities wanted to study their approach. Politicians talked about turning it into public policy. But Frank, Robert, and the whole family stayed grounded. "What matters isn't fame or recognition," Sarah said during a family meeting. "What matters is that we're making a real difference in people's lives. And we can't forget where we came from," reminded Ethan, now 8 years old and growing wiser by the day. "If it weren't for Uncle Frank's kind heart, we'd still be under the old bridge today." "Ethan, you're the one who taught me kindness," Frank corrected. "When I saw you sleeping with the pigs, I learned what unconditional love really means." 2 years after the Dignity Project began, the farm had helped over 20 families rebuild their lives. Some found work on other farms in the area, others started small businesses of their own, and a few even moved to different cities in search of new opportunities. But all of them stayed in touch with the farm, sending updates and visiting whenever they could. A true network of solidarity and mutual support had formed. Ethan, now 9, continued to excel in school and spoke confidently about his dream of becoming a veterinarian, but he'd also developed a passion for social work. "Uncle Frank, when I grow up, I want to be a vet and also help families like you helped us. How do you plan to do that?" "I could be a vet who works on farms that help people. That way I combine the two things I love most, animals and families." The purity and wisdom of that child never ceased to amaze everyone around him. One Sunday afternoon, 3 years after that first night in the barn, Frank sat on the porch, watching Ethan play in the yard with Tyler and other children from families in the project. Robert walked over and sat beside him. "What's on your mind?" "I'm thinking about how surprising life can be. 3 years ago, I was a lonely, bitter man. Now, I have a big family and a farm full of life. And it all started with Ethan sleeping in the barn." "Yeah, what seemed like a tragic scene back then turned into the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "Why do you think Ethan ended up in your barn? There were other farms around." Frank thought for a moment before answering. "I think the pigs sensed he needed protection and love, and maybe I was chosen to learn a lesson I'd needed for a long time." "What lesson?" "That true wealth isn't in the money we have, but in the love we're able to give and receive." Robert nodded, moved. "Frank, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret helping us? Especially in those first few months when you lost so many contracts and the community turned its back on you." Frank smiled and looked at Ethan, who was patiently teaching a younger child how to feed the calves. "Robert, if I could go back and do it all over, I'd make the exact same choices. You didn't just change my life, you saved me from a loneliness that was eating me alive." "But you already had a comfortable life. Materially, yes, but emotionally it was empty. When Dorothy passed, I thought I'd never be happy again. You all proved that family isn't just who you're born with. It's who you choose to love. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a van bringing another family to join the project. Ethan ran to greet the newcomers, as he always did. "Hi, I'm Ethan. You're going to love it here. There are gentle animals, great food, and everyone is really nice." Frank and Robert watched the scene with emotion. The boy who had once arrived at the farm, sleeping with pigs out of pure love for his parents, was now welcoming other children with the same generosity. "Ethan's become our little ambassador," Robert said proudly. "He was born for this. His heart's too big for his chest." That evening, during the community dinner held every Friday at the farm, Frank made an announcement. That surprised everyone. "Everyone, I want to share a decision I've made." All conversation stopped as everyone turned to listen. "I've decided to officially register Robert as my partner, with 50% ownership of the farm." The silence that followed was broken by emotional applause. Robert stood up, unable to speak for a few minutes. "Frank, I can't accept this." "Why not?" "Because you've already done so much for us. It wouldn't be fair." "Robert, you've turned this farm into the most prosperous property in the region. You've developed innovative techniques, managed it with exemplary skill, and most importantly, you brought life and joy to a place that was dying of loneliness. But no buts. You deserve this partnership. And besides, I want Ethan to have his future secured. If anything happens to me, he'll have his share of the inheritance." Sarah began to cry, moved. "Frank, you truly treat us like family, because you are my family, the only real family I have." Ethan got up from the table and ran to hug Frank. "Uncle Frank, does this mean you're officially my real uncle now?" "I always have been, Ethan. Now it's just on paper, too." The partnership was formalized a few weeks later in a simple but moving ceremony. William Parker was one of the witnesses, and Jennifer came all the way from New York to attend. "Robert, you deserve this and so much more," she said, hugging her brother-in-law. "I'm sorry it took me so long to recognize your worth. Jennifer, what matters is that we're a united family now. Sarah always wanted this. And now Ethan will have real cousins to play with whenever he wants," Sarah added, referring to Jennifer's children. The ceremony was celebrated with a big party at the farm. All the families helped by the Dignity Project attended, along with neighbors, suppliers, and workers from partner farms. Ethan made sure to show all the guests the pig pen, where he'd slept his first night. "This is where it all began," he explained to a group of curious children. "I slept with the pigs because they didn't judge me and kept me warm." "Weren't you scared?" one child asked. "I was scared of people, not animals. The pigs were kinder to me than most adults I met in the city. And now? Now I know there are good people in the world. Uncle Frank taught me that. He saw me sleeping here and, instead of kicking me out, decided to help me." One of the mothers who overheard the conversation remarked, "Ethan, you're a very special child." "I'm not special. I just learned that when you truly love someone, you'll do anything for them. I did it for my parents, Uncle Frank did it for us, and now we all do it for the families who come here." The simplicity and depth of his words moved everyone present. Later, as the party was winding down, Frank stepped out onto the porch of the main house. He needed a few quiet moments to process the emotions of the day. Robert found him there shortly after. "Running away from your own party. Just needed a moment to think. Sometimes I still can't believe everything that's happened." "What exactly?" "How a child sleeping in a pig pen completely changed my life, and so many others. Ethan really is special. He taught me that true love knows no barriers. A 6-year-old boy was willing to give up the comfort of family to protect his parents from humiliation. That's love in its purest form. And you were able to recognize that purity and act on it." "Robert, can I confess something?" "Of course." "That first morning, when I found Ethan in the pig pen, my first reaction was anger. I thought about calling the police, about driving you all out of the area." "Really? Really?" "It wasn't until I saw his vulnerability, the way the pigs protected him, that my heart opened. At that moment I understood I was facing something sacred." Sacred. A child's love for their parents. There's nothing purer or more powerful in this world. Robert stayed quiet for a few minutes, absorbing those words. "Frank, do you know the greatest lesson Ethan taught us?" "What?" "That no matter how hard our situation is, there's always a way to love and be loved. He chose to sleep with pigs, but he never lost the ability to trust good people like you. And you taught me that family isn't determined by blood, but by choice. I chose you and you chose me." The conversation was interrupted by Ethan's arrival, who had been looking for them. "Uncle Frank, Dad, everyone's asking where you are. There's a man here who wants to talk to you about a really cool project." "What project, Ethan?" "He said he wants to build a special school here on the farm to teach kids about animals and farming, and he wants me to be the first student." Frank and Robert exchanged glances, intrigued. They returned to the party and found the man Ethan had mentioned. He was a renowned educator who had followed the success of the Dignity Project and wanted to propose an innovative educational partnership. "Mr. Frank, my name is Professor David Thompson. I lead an organization that develops alternative educational projects." "Pleasure to meet you, Professor. Ethan said you have an interesting proposal." "I'm impressed with the work you do here. The combination of social reintegration, rural labor, and values-based education is exactly what we need to replicate elsewhere." "How so?" "I'd like to establish a model school here that blends formal education with rural and social learning. Students would study traditional subjects in the morning and work with farming and livestock in the afternoon." The proposal was intriguing, but Frank had doubts. "Professor, we're not educators. We're just farmers trying to help people. But you have something many educational institutions have lost. You teach by example. Ethan is living proof that children learn more from love and dedication than from theories." Ethan, who had been listening eagerly, stepped forward. "Uncle Frank, it'd be so cool to have a school here on the farm. The kids who come with their families could study without having to go to the city. And would you like to study here?" "I would. I could keep learning about animals and still help other kids who arrive scared like I was." The idea of Ethan becoming a mentor to other children moved Frank deeply. "Professor David, let's discuss this proposal further, but I'll only agree if Ethan is truly the first student." Of course, in fact, he'd be the model student. His story of resilience would be a constant inspiration to others. Over the following months, the school project was developed in detail. The idea was to create an institution that combined standard education with rural learning, environmental education, and human values. Ethan actively participated in the planning, offering suggestions on how to welcome traumatized children and how to use the farm's animals for therapy. "The kids who come here are afraid of adults, but not animals," he explained during their meeting. "The pigs taught me that sometimes we find kindness where we least expect it." Professor David was struck by Ethan's maturity and wisdom. "This boy has a natural gift for working with people. Have you thought about nurturing these skills?" "How so?" asked Sarah. "Ethan shows a rare capacity for empathy and leadership. With the right encouragement, he could become a great social educator." "But he wants to be a vet," Robert reminded. "There's no reason he can't be both a vet and a social educator. In fact, it would be a perfect match for the kind of work you do here." The school opened a year later, with Ethan as the first student and 16 other children from families supported by the Dignity Project. The curriculum combined traditional subjects with hands-on classes in agriculture, livestock, basic veterinary care, and social education. Ethan quickly became the natural leader of the group. Younger children would come to him with their problems, and he always found creative ways to help. "How do you get everyone to like you?" asked a 6-year-old girl who had recently arrived with her parents. "It's not that everyone likes me, it's that I like everyone first. When you like people, they feel it and like you back. But what if they're mean? Mean people are usually sad people. If you're kind to them, maybe they'll be less sad and less mean." The wisdom of that 10-year-old boy continued to surprise even the most experienced educators. The school was an immediate success. Children from other towns began enrolling, and soon there was a considerable waiting list. Most important was the learning environment that had been created. The children learned math by calculating animal, feed science by observing plant growth, and history through the stories of families who came to the farm. Ethan excelled in all subjects, especially writing. His essays about life on the farm, overcoming hardships, and the importance of family were used as examples for other classes. In one of his most memorable essays, he wrote, "When I was little and slept with the pigs, a lot of people thought it was a sad thing. But I learned that sometimes the things that seem sad are actually the beginnings of something beautiful. The pigs kept me warm when I was cold, protected me when I was scared, and never judged me when I was dirty and poorly dressed. They taught me that true love doesn't care about appearances. Uncle Frank learned that too when he saw me in the barn. He could have chased me away, but he chose to love me instead. And because of that choice, our whole family's life changed. Now I want to teach other kids that no matter how hard things seem, there's always someone willing to love us. Sometimes that someone might even be a pig, but the love is just as real." This essay was published in the local newspaper and later in an education magazine, inspiring teachers across the country. 5 years after the school opened, Ethan was 15 and preparing to take the entrance exam for veterinary school. But his plans had grown. "Uncle Frank, I've decided I want to study veterinary medicine and education at the same time." "How will you manage that?" "I'll take veterinary classes in the morning and education classes at night. I want to be a vet who also teaches kids." "It won't be easy balancing 2 programs. I know, but I learned from you that the best things in life take effort. You worked hard to help our family. Now it's my turn to work hard and help other families." Frank was moved by Ethan's determination. The boy he had once found sleeping with pigs was becoming an exceptional young man. "Ethan, no matter what you choose to do, know that I'm so proud of you." "Why?" "Because you've never lost the purity of your heart. You're still that generous little boy who slept in the barn to protect his parents, but now you have the knowledge and maturity to help so many more people. I learned that from you. Uncle Frank, you showed me we can turn our pain into strength to help others." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a van bringing a new family to the project. As always, Ethan was the first to welcome them. This time it was a family with 3 small children, all visibly frightened and malnourished. Ethan approached slowly, with the same care Frank had used with him years before. "Hi everyone, I'm Ethan. I know you're scared, but this is a safe place." The youngest child, a boy about 5 years old, hid behind his mother. "He doesn't. I like strangers," the woman explained, embarrassed. "I understand. When I first got here, I was scared too, want to see something cool." Ethan led the family to the pig pen. "These are my pig friends. They took care of me when I was little." "What do you mean?" asked the shy boy, curious. "I used to sleep here with them because I didn't have a home. They kept me warm at night and were never mean to me." "You slept with the pigs?" "I did. And you know why? Because sometimes we find kindness in the most unexpected places. These pigs have big hearts, just like the people who live on this farm." The boy cautiously stepped closer to the fence and reached out to touch one of the pigs. The animal gently approached and let him pet it. "He's so gentle." "They're all very gentle, and they know when a child needs comfort." Frank watched the scene from a distance, tears in his eyes. Ethan had become exactly what he'd hoped, icy arm, young man who could turn pain into hope, fear into trust, loneliness into love. Robert walked over and stood beside Frank. "Our boy's all grown up, isn't he? Grown up, but still that pure-hearted child who slept with pigs out of love. And now he's teaching other kids to find love in unexpected places." "Robert, do you have any idea the impact Ethan's having on these children's lives? He's doing for them what you did for him, showing them there's always hope. Actually, he's doing something even more important. He's proving that real love multiplies. The more we give, the more we have to give." That night, during the community dinner, the new family was introduced to everyone. The 3 children were still shy, but no longer showed the terror they'd arrived with. Ethan sat beside the youngest boy and talked to him throughout the meal. "What's your name?" "Mason. Mason is a nice name." "Want to be my friend, Mason?" The boy nodded timidly. "Tomorrow I'll show you all the animals on the farm. There are calves, horses, chickens, and even some baby pigs born last week. Can I touch them?" "Of course. Here, you can pet all the animals. They like affection. And they don't bite." "No, Mason, you're safe here. No one will hurt you. Not people, not animals." The certainty in Ethan's voice gave Mason confidence, and he visibly relaxed. After dinner, as the families settled into their homes, Frank found Ethan on the porch, gazing at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about how funny life is, Uncle Frank." "How so?" 10 years ago, I was a scared kid sleeping in the pig pen. Today, I'm the one helping scared kids not be afraid anymore. And how does that make you feel?" "Grateful. Grateful you found me that night. Grateful the pigs took care of me. Grateful my parents never gave up." "Ethan, can I tell you a secret?" "Sure." "That night in the pig pen didn't just change your life, it changed mine too. I was very lonely and bitter. You taught me how to love again." "How did I do that?" "By showing me real love has no limits. A 6-year-old boy was willing to give up comfort to protect his parents. And that made me realize if you were capable of so much love, I should be too." Ethan smiled and hugged Frank. "Uncle Frank, can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Of course." "That first night when I woke up and saw you looking at me, I wasn't afraid. I felt like I'd found someone who would protect me forever." "How did you know that?" "I can't explain it. Maybe because you looked at me with the same kindness the pigs did. No judgment, just love." Frank was moved by that revelation. "Ethan, you know you can always count on me, right?" "I know. And you can count on me too. Now it's my turn to take care of you when you get old." "You don't need to worry about that." "Of course I do. Family takes care of family. That's what you taught me." That night, Frank went to bed with a heart full of gratitude. In 10 years, a child sleeping in a barn had turned into a large family, a thriving farm, an innovative school, and a social project that had changed dozens of lives. But the most important thing was knowing the cycle of love Ethan had started would keep multiplying through the children he was helping. The next morning, Frank woke to the sound of laughter coming from the backyard. He looked out the window and saw Ethan playing with Mason and the other kids, teaching them how to feed the calves. "Be careful, Mason. Stretch your hand out so he doesn't accidentally bite you." "Will it hurt?" "Not at all. It's like when you suck your thumb, only tastier for him." Mason laughed when the calf licked his hand with its rough tongue. "That's funny. Yeah. Animals show affection in different ways. Calves lick, pigs nuzzle, horses blow softly. And people? People hug, pat your head, and most of all, they protect the ones they love. Like how you protected me." "Yesterday when I was scared?" "Exactly, Mason. And now you don't have to be afraid of anything anymore." Frank smiled, listening to that conversation. Ethan was passing on everything he'd learned over the last 10 years. Later that day, they were visited by a journalist from a national magazine who wanted to write a story about the success of the Dignity Project and the school. "Mr. Frank, what do you credit for the success of all these projects?" "Love. Plain and simple." "How so?" "It all started when I found a child sleeping with pigs because he didn't want to shame his parents. That taught me real love knows no barriers. Everything else was a natural consequence." "And Ethan? What's his role in all this?" "Ethan is the heart of everything we do here. He taught me we should love first, judge later. In fact, he taught me that when we truly love, we stop judging altogether." "Can I speak with him?" "Of course, but remember, despite his maturity, he's still a teenager. Don't put too much pressure on him." The journalist found Ethan in the stable, helping Mason brush one of the gentlest horses on the farm. "Ethan, can I ask you some questions about your story?" "Sure, sir. But can I keep helping Mason while we talk?" "No problem. How does it feel to be called an inspiration to so many people?" Ethan thought carefully before answering, as he always did. "I don't think I'm an inspiration. I just did what any child would do for their parents. The real inspiration is Uncle Frank opening his heart to a strange kid. But what you did was extraordinary for a 6-year-old. Sir, when you love someone, there's no age limit for doing the right thing. I loved my parents and wanted to protect them. The rest just happened." "What about sleeping with the pigs? Weren't you scared?" Ethan smiled, remembering those days. "I was scared of the adults who spoke badly about my family, not the pigs. They treated me better than a lot of people did. They taught me kindness exists everywhere, even where you least expect it." What else did you learn from that experience? That we shouldn't judge people by how they look or their situation. When I got here, I was dirty, poorly dressed, and terrified. Uncle Frank could have kicked me out, but he chose to love me. Now I do the same for the children who come here. Mason, who had been listening to everything, approached Ethan. Ethan, you're my hero. Why, Mason? Because you helped me stop being afraid. Yesterday I was so scared, but today I'm already playing with the horses. Ethan hugged Mason warmly. Mason, you're very brave. You just needed someone to show you that. The journalist was moved by the scene. Rarely had he witnessed such purity and wisdom in someone so young. That afternoon, as the journalist finished his interviews, Frank received a call that would once again change the course of their lives. Frank, it's William Parker. I need to speak with you urgently. What happened, William? I received an offer from the federal government. They want to turn our project into a national public policy. It'll be a chance to replicate our model across the country. Frank was surprised by the news. How would that work? They'd create a national program based on our project. You and Robert would be the general coordinators, traveling the country to implement similar farms. And our farm? It would keep running but become the training center for other coordinators. Ethan could be the youth ambassador for the project. The offer was tempting, but Frank needed to talk to the family before making any decision. That night, during the community dinner, he presented the proposal to everyone. What do you all think? Is it worth expanding our work nationwide? Robert was the first to speak. Frank, if we can help more families, we should, but only if we don't lose the heart of what we do here. What do you mean? This place is special because there's real love here. If we expand too fast, we might lose that. Sarah agreed with her husband. Robert's right. What makes our project work isn't the techniques or methods, it's the genuine care we have for people. Ethan, who had been listening carefully, asked to speak. Can I give my opinion? Of course, Ethan. I think we should accept, but with one condition. What condition? That I can go with you on the trips to teach other kids how to stop being afraid. And that we always come back here, because this is our real home. The wisdom of his suggestion moved everyone. Ethan's right, said Frank. We can expand our work, but we must never abandon our roots. The decision was unanimous. They would accept the government's offer but keep the farm as the central base for all operations. In the following months, preparations for the national expansion took shape. The farm welcomed delegations from various states interested in implementing similar projects. Ethan officially became the youth ambassador of the Dignity Project, visiting other regions to share his story and teach children about resilience and hope. Everywhere he went, Ethan repeated the same message. No matter how hard your situation is right now, if you have love in your heart and find people willing to help, everything can change. I used to sleep with pigs, and now I'm here talking to you. Love transforms everything. 2 weeks before his 16th birthday, Ethan made an announcement that surprised everyone. Uncle Frank, I've decided not to take the college entrance exam this year. Why, Ethan? You've always wanted to study veterinary medicine. And I still do, but first I want to spend a whole year traveling the country with you, helping to set up new projects. I want to make sure other kids get the same chances I did. Ethan, you can't delay your studies for this. I'm not delaying, I'm prioritizing. 1 year helping hundreds of families is worth more than a year in college. Veterinary school can wait. Robert and Sarah supported their son's decision, recognizing that he had developed a very clear life mission. If this is what your heart is asking for, we support you, said Sarah. We just ask one thing, added Robert. Don't give up on your academic dreams. The country needs veterinarians with your sensitivity. I promise, Dad, I'll study veterinary medicine and education, just as I always planned. Only now with more hands-on experience. On Ethan's 16th birthday, the farm organized a special celebration. All the families who had been helped by the project over the years came to celebrate. During the party, Frank gave a heartfelt speech. Exactly 10 years ago, I found a child sleeping in the pig pen with the hogs. That night, I thought I was witnessing a tragedy. In truth, I was witnessing the beginning of a miracle. Ethan taught us that true love knows no bounds, no age, no fear of sacrifice. Because of that lesson, hundreds of families have been transformed. Dozens of children have found hope, and a lonely old farmer discovered what it means to be truly happy. The audience applauded with emotion, but Ethan asked to speak. "Uncle, Frank, thank you for your kind words, but I want everyone to know one thing. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just loved my parents the way they deserved to be loved. The extraordinary part was finding people like you, willing to turn that love into opportunities for hundreds of other families. The hero of this story isn't me. It's all of you who chose to believe helping others is worth it." That night, after everyone had left, the family gathered on the porch of the main house to talk about the future. "Ethan, are you sure you want to spend the next year traveling?" asked Frank. "I'm absolutely sure, Uncle Frank. You know why?" "Why?" "Because 10 years ago you didn't think twice before helping me. Now it's my turn not to think twice before helping other children. But you're still so young. Uncle Frank, you taught me that age doesn't matter when it comes to doing the right thing. I was 6 when I slept with the hogs to protect my parents. Now I'm 16, and I want to use that experience to protect other families." Robert looked at his son with endless pride. "Ethan, you've become the man we always dreamed you'd be. I learned from the best examples, Dad. From you, who never gave up on our family. From Mum, who kept hope alive even in the hardest moments. And from Uncle Frank, who showed me kindness exists in this world." Sarah hugged her son with tears in her eyes. "My boy, I'm so proud of you, but promise me you'll take care of yourself on these trips." "I promise, Mom. And, I promise I'll always come home, because it was here on this farm that I learned what it means to be truly loved." Frank stood and walked to the fence of the pig pen, followed by the other 3. There was the place where it all began, where a desperate child had found refuge among the hogs, and where a lonely farmer had discovered life's true meaning. "Ethan, there's something I've never asked you," said Frank. "What is it, Uncle Frank? That first night when you woke up and saw me watching you, what did you really think?" Ethan smiled, remembering the moment that had changed everything. "I thought, this man has the same kind eyes as the hogs who took care of me. He won't hurt me." "And you were right." "I was, Uncle Frank, and do you know what my second thought was?" "What?" "That you'd take care of my parents too. I saw in your eyes that you understood what it means to love a family." Frank hugged Ethan tightly, moved to know that from the very first moment there had been a special connection between them. "Ethan, no matter where life takes us from here, I want you to know you've been the greatest gift I've ever received." "Uncle Frank, can I tell you one last secret?" "Of course. That first night when I was sleeping with the pigs, I made a wish to God. I asked him to send someone who would care for our family the way I was trying to, and he sent you." "Ethan, I'm not making this up. I really did ask for that, and when I woke up and saw you looking at me, I knew God had heard me." Robert and Sarah exchanged glances, moved by their son's revelation. "That's why I never doubted everything would work out," Ethan continued, "because I knew God had heard my prayer and sent an angel to our family." Frank couldn't hold back his tears. In that moment, he fully understood that their meeting in the pig pen hadn't been a coincidence. It had been a divine gift for all of them. "Ethan, thank you for choosing me to be your angel, because you've been mine too." "Then we're each other's angels, Uncle Frank, and we'll keep being angels for all the families we're still going to help." That night, the 4 of them talked on the porch until dawn, making plans for the future and reminiscing about the most memorable moments of the past 10 years. When the sun began to rise, Ethan stood up and walked to the pig pen. The animals approached the fence, recognizing their old friend. "Thank you guys," he said, petting the pigs. "You taught me that true love exists in the most unexpected places. Now it's my turn to teach that to other kids." Frank, Robert, and Sarah watched the scene with deep emotion. There was living proof that true love has the power to transform any situation, no matter how hopeless it seems. The end. So, dear listeners, what did you think of this touching story? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and if you've heard a similar story. Do you believe Ethan made the right choice by delaying his studies to help more families? Share your honest thoughts below. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories to come.